Alderman Clark. Alderman Hurt. Alderman Spaghettis.
Present.
Alderwoman Swanson.
Here.
Alderman Parker. Alderman Parker. Alderman Poulos.
Here.
Alderman Geenan.
Here.
Mayor Tomes.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Do you need to read that?
Okay. This meeting will be conducted by audio and video conference without a physically present quorum of the Rock Island City Council due to the disaster declaration issued by Governor Pritzker. Because of this order related to COVID-19 public health concerns affecting the state and the city, the mayor has determined that an in-person meeting at City Hall with all participants is not practical or prudent. For this reason, aldermen and staff may not all be physically present at City Hall, and physical public attendance at City Hall may be limited. This meeting can be viewed on Channel 9 for MediaCom customers living in Rock Island, or on the city's YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/user/rockislandil/live.
Okay.
And Parks and Recreation Department overview.
Good evening. Todd Winter and I are here tonight to give an overview of the Park and Recs Department. And for those watching at home who don't know who I am, I'm John Grip, the Parks and Rec Director for the City of Rock Island. Todd Winter is the Assistant Director. And we appreciate the opportunity to share some information with you about the department. First off, the mission of the department is to enrich the quality of life for our community through exceptional recreational and park experiences. Basically, we're here to make the community's life better. Our vision is we will operate attractive, clean, and safe parks, top-notch facilities, and quality recreational programs and events. We'll also provide social, physical, and emotional health benefits, and we'll aim to continuously improve the health, a healthy community, happy and strong community while maintaining financial stability. The department operates under 5 core values on all decisions that we make. First and foremost is health and wellness of our community. It's our job to build a happier and healthier community through the things that we offer. The second is teamwork and community. We work together to make Rock Island better, and that's something that we've worked on over the past couple of years by expanding our partnerships, our friends groups, involving the community in surveys, the council, the park board, and everything that align with council goals. Next is innovation. We're always going to seek ways to be at the forefront through new ideas, through feedback and research. And we've shown a lot of that during COVID. We've thought outside the box, we've operated inside the guidelines and been able to get quite a bit done for our community, our surrounding community in the Quad Cities during this time. Next is sustainability. We feel that we've come a long way in being very financially, fiscally responsible with the means that we're provided and the revenue that we generate. We always look for partnership opportunities. We look for grant opportunities where we can double up our funds and so on to make sure we can stretch every dollar as far as we can. And last but not least is our customer service and integrity. We're committed to providing exceptional customer service, and we model ethical and professional behavior at all times. The staffing levels for the department are, we have 14 full-time staff, 43 part-time staff, and when our seasonal operations are open, we have 119 seasonal staff. And just something to note, in 2018, the end of 2018, we completed a department reorganization that's reduced expenses in the department by over $300,000 in salaries and benefits. The financial makeup of our department is as follows. We receive tax dollars that cover about 33% of our operational budget, and the remaining 67% is offset by the revenues that we generate on a typical year. And obviously this year is not a typical year. Some of the things that the tax dollars help cover are the park maintenance staff that's through Public Works and also through the Parks Department, our general park maintenance, the maintenance equipment, vehicles, supplies, fuel, a portion of the recreational staff and a portion of the admin staff, and all of our free community events that we put on annually. Some of the things that are covered by the revenue that we generate are enterprise operation expenses, and those are all of RIFAC's operational expenses, Highland Springs Golf Course, Saukey Golf Course, and Whitewater Junction operational expenses, recreation program expense, rec supplies, sport rec programming and amenities, and all other expenses that are associated with the fees that we charge. We have a process in place that ensures the programs that we operate in events are covered by the revenue that we generate, whether it's through fees, alternate funding sources, a sponsor, something. If they don't offset, there's got to be a really good reason for that, and we try not to do that. Some examples of where we generate our revenue would be our programming revenue. We have hundreds and hundreds of programs for adults, kids, and families on an annual basis, and that comes out in our program brochure that's located on our website during this time. During normal times, it's mailed to every Rock Island Milan household 3 times a year. We have our rental revenue at RIFAC, Whitewater Junction, the golf courses. We do a number of outings, the sports complex, a number of tournaments and programs there. And we have our shelters that we rent out throughout the park every day when able to do so. Our sponsorship is another revenue stream that we've really worked hard on. They help cover our special events, our programming and facilities. You'll see a number of banners up at our facilities and parks, Whitewater Junction, RIFAC. That's a revenue stream that we really haven't tapped into in the past, but over the past few years we've been hitting it hard. We're going to continue to grow that. Membership revenue is another stream. A number of memberships are available at RIFAC, Whitewater Junction, and both golf courses. That's a large portion of our revenue for those. It's kind of like stocks and bonds with our memberships and daily fee use. You want to keep those coming in as revenue streams to help offset expense. Where I have the gold star listed here, this is where we're really excited. It's a newer area for us, the alternative funding sources. We've always gone after grants, but never like we have been in the past few years. We're very specific, and we want to make sure that those grants are lined up with projects. We want the project first, and then we go after the grants. It's nice to get something and then try to shoehorn something into it, but we want to be a little more thought out in that process, and Todd will talk a little bit more about that later. We've also worked with CED and Colleen and others for some HUD fundings and block grant funds that have helped us get some projects completed. There's a number of donations, Friends of Douglas Park, Friends of Hauberg, fundraising, our partnerships. All of these things come together and they equal a tremendous amount of money on an annual basis that help us get a lot of projects completed. As I mentioned before, the department has 4 enterprise operations. We've got the Rock Island Fitness and Activity Center, Whitewater Junction Aquatic Center, Saukey Golf Course, and Highland Springs Golf Course. And what enterprise means is that these facilities are offset through the revenue that they generate. There's no tax dollar support or very little tax dollar support. RIFAC gets a very little percentage of tax dollar support for the community side. But the majority of these operations are offset by the revenue that they generate. And that's something I'll talk a little bit more coming up. But typically, RIFAC sees about 60% of its membership from Rock Island and about 40% outside of Rock Island. Whitewater Junction has pretty much the same numbers, 60% in Rock Island, 40% outside. Highland Springs, you see 25% in Rock Island, roughly 75% from other cities. And Saukey Golf Course, 40% from Rock Island and 60% from other cities. And of those other cities, about 40% of those come from Iowa. So we're generating a lot of movement, thousands of points of movement each year throughout the city, which is critical to our operations and collecting the revenue we need to offset. But it's also, this is something I cannot quite quantify, but I know that it stimulates our economy in Rock Island. Folks stop to get gas, food, things of that nature as part of our activities here in Rock Island. So it is a boost to the economy. Some challenges that the department has faced over the past 4 or 5 years is funding. There was a period of time, 6, 7 years, where we were flat on the money that we received from our tax dollars. I'm happy to say that over the past 2, 3, 4 years, we have seen a slight increase in that, and we're very thankful for that, but there's still going to be that gap where the inflation is going up higher than the money we receive. So that's something that we'll be addressing through advice from Randy and the council and the park board. Maybe looking at some services that we offer that we may pivot to some different services or maybe a reduction in some. That's to be determined. Another is gaming funds. Good or bad, we've relied heavily on gaming funds for some projects in the past, and we know that those funds are tied up right now, and that's fine. That's another challenge that we're going to take on and address. Minimum wage is a big challenge for the department. Over the next 5 years, there's going to be a step increase to get to $15 per hour. Like it or not, this is going to equal a reduction in our part-time and seasonal staff. So we're going to have to take another look at our operations and how we're set up and how we can combine positions and reduce positions, unfortunately, while we maintain the same service level, which is going to be tough. Competition is another challenge for us. We do have neighboring cities that offer a lot of the same programs that we offer that aren't set up financially like we are. They're not as revenue dependent as we are. So our answer to that is we've started to partner with them where we may do things a little differently than they do. We provide it. Maybe they do some things differently than we do. They provide it, and we come together and partner on certain programs too. Competition for grants has also gotten tougher and tougher each year. There's a lot more need than there are grant funds available. One of the ways that we've addressed this is through our partnerships. We apply jointly with a partner, 2 partners, 3 partners to go after a grant as part of an overall project, and that increases our chances in being awarded that grant. Tax dollar perception is another one that we're going to do a much better job on in terms of enterprise operations. I run into, on a regular basis, folks challenging me, why should I have to pay to play golf or go to Rifeck or to Whitewater when I already pay my taxes? So we sit them down and explain that the enterprise operations, your tax dollars don't go to those operations. So it's something I want to do a better job as a department to get that message out there and educate our community, because it's something that's important. Successes that we've seen over the past 5 years, as I mentioned earlier, our reorganization was a huge success, and that's something that we just don't do in 2 years ago and let it go by. That's something that Todd and I and staff look at on an annual basis. How can we be more efficient? If we do require another position, is it paid for through the fees that are generated from the programs that are developed? Is it an area that's gotten so big one person can't take care of it, so we need to expand? Will it be covered by those fees? Internal partners has been great. We have success with all other departments within the city. We've worked with them. Public Works is a great partner. The library, the King Center, the police, fire, you name it. I've been with the city for over 20 years, and I've never seen it, the synergy that we have as a group. So that's something to be proud of. Our public-private partnerships, as I mentioned, the Friends of Hauberg, Friends of Douglas, Friends of Longview, et cetera, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that these folks have helped us raise and frankly have donated on their own to see a lot of these projects be completed. The alternate funding, the grant sponsorships, donations, CED, that's been wonderful to us. Some areas we're going to go into are some of the living trusts. When people pass on a portion of their estate, a fraction of a life insurance policy, there's other areas that people can give if they're not in a position to do so now. And then finally is our transparency. This is something that we've worked very hard on for the past 5 years through surveying our customers, both internal and external, developing focus groups. You all saw the questionnaire that came out to the council, our park board, and a number of our other focus groups that help us determine what our goals are going to be annually, and we make sure those are in line with council goals as well. It's also led us to the development of our 5-year strategic plan, which is going to be used as a tool to ensure our success as we go on, and Todd's going to talk a little bit more about that.
So in 2020, we developed our 5-year strategic plan, and this was created for a few purposes. Number one is provide focus for our department, also align our staff around a shared vision, and then kind of a more broadly, we want to instill strategic thinking into everything we do, so really emphasize that in every decision we make. And then finally, to ensure to the community that we're fulfilling our mission and our values. A few of the issues that we want to resolve with the plan is to address our funding concerns. As John mentioned, we do have competition for services. Also, competing agendas, both internally and externally, making sure we have that aligned vision. And then to address aging infrastructure needs, and finally to improve our communication. The plan was developed in a variety of ways. Number one, we looked at our action plan. We had a 1-year action plan in 2019 that we created just to address some short-term needs. So we used that as the basis, and then we expanded it over a little bit longer term period. We also looked at the current city council goals to make sure we're on the same page and we're following the direction set forth by the city council. We looked at past Parks and Rec master plans and our 2015 operational audit, just to make sure we're not reinventing the wheel, and we're also following up on some of the direction that was set forth in those plans. We have CIP prioritization plans, making sure we're addressing some of the projects that have been prioritized in the past. We use our annual reporting process, which we use to evaluate all of our programs. We do a program life cycle analysis each year. We do budget and fee reviews. We look at results that we get from our program and event surveys. We do monthly facility performance measures for our enterprise facilities, and then we looked at past goals and objectives for our staff. We also did a questionnaire that was sent out to City Council, Park Board, staff, and some community members, and we used the feedback we got from that in developing the plan. And then finally, we had a consultant-led situational analysis workshop last February, and the report that we were given from that was helpful in developing the plan. So what came of it was 6 initiatives that form the basis of the plan. The first one is to foster and grow mutually beneficial collaborative partnerships. So as John mentioned, we do utilize partnerships pretty extensively, and we're working to establish stronger ties to a lot of our other community agencies and organizations that will help us expand our programming, recreational programming reach, so we make sure we meet the needs of all of our population. We also are going to create a system that makes sure that all of our partnerships are mutually beneficial. So we'll put it through a process to make sure that we are expanding our mission and also helping that the other organizations expand their mission. And then finally, we want to make sure we're utilizing our internal partnerships effectively and appropriately. The second initiative is to set a path for long-term financial success. So funding and budgeting is a major concern, and we're going to work hard to build our fund reserve through a variety of methods. We also work hard to prioritize our park and facility projects so we can implement realistic funding campaigns to complete those projects. Grants are a large part of funding for our projects, and we're going to streamline our application process, which will help us set ourselves up for the best chance of succeeding in writing those grants. We utilize sponsors to offset costs for events and programs, so we're going to work hard to establish strong ties to those sponsors and then always seek new opportunities as well. And then finally, we're going to work with city administration to make sure we're appropriately funded to operate at our appropriate service level. The third initiative is to instill pride in our neighborhoods and community through our parks. So we need to improve our systems and make sure our parks are clean, safe, and usable. We also need to develop a plan to address our deferred maintenance items to make sure that list does not continue to grow. We need to get people into our parks, particularly our Type 2 neighborhood parks. So we're going to create events and programming in some of the more neighborhood parks that we don't necessarily have programming in right now, just to get people into the parks, promote their usage, gather feedback from the residents, help us identify some repairs and upgrades that are needed in those parks. And then finally, we're going to promote the environmental stewardship that our parks provide. We have a lot of unused natural areas that are park property that we need to celebrate and highlight. The fourth initiative is to provide an exceptional and diverse programming mix. So recreational programming is a large part of what we do, and we need to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all demographics in our community. So we'll continuously evaluate the recreational needs of our community, do a needs assessment to gather that feedback. We also want to make sure we're on the forefront of programming trends. We're doing research, we're finding out new ways to provide programming. And then finally, we're going to continue to improve our evaluation system, so we're always seeking to improve on what we're doing. The fifth initiative is to be the leader in high-quality recreational facilities. So these are our 4 enterprise facilities plus the Campbell Complex, which is one of our other core facilities. But we have a lot of competition for the services for these facilities, so we need to think strategically on how we can set ourselves apart from our competition. We also need to make sure we have sustainable plans for these facilities operations for the long term. So we're going to develop sustainability plans for each one of our facilities. We have some aging, our facilities are aging and they're going to need upgrades in the near term, so we need to develop sound and realistic fundraising and capital campaigns to achieve those projects. And then finally, we need to utilize progressive pricing, marketing, and promotions to attract new customers and retain our current patrons. And the last initiative is to pursue excellence in customer service and employee development. So we need to strive for transparency and seek new ways to collect feedback and how we respond, so how we communicate to internally and externally to our customers. We also need to evaluate our policies and processes to make sure that they are fair and easy to understand, and they have the best interests of the customer in mind. We need to align our staffing needs with our goals to make sure we're appropriately staffed to achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves. And then finally, we need to create an environment that encourages strategic thinking in all levels of our staff, from our frontline seasonal staff all the way through our full-time managers. So we have the plan, now we have to implement it. The implementation of the plan is going to be done in a variety of methods, but first off, each one of those initiatives will have specific action steps that we'll update annually that will kind of set goals for each one of those initiatives. We'll also use this plan to develop goals and objectives for each of our staff, each programming area and facilities. We do biannual park walkthroughs that help us identify necessary repairs, and then we update our annual park plan. We do quarterly goals reviews with our staff to track progress on goals. And then we also do our annual CIP prioritization, making sure we're updating projects that need to be prioritized. We do a grant and fundraising review to make sure we're aligning projects with available grants. And then finally, we do our annual department review and report that helps us track our progress and highlight successes.
Thank you, Todd. So going forward, the department will use the strategic plan as a tool for success to build our reserves. We know that we've taken quite a hit here with our revenues this year due to COVID. With this plan in place, I believe it's going to keep us on the right track to continue to build those reserves. Is it going to happen in 1 year? No. But I think each year we're going to a little closer in that direction, and we're going to see a lot of movement over here in the next couple of years. We're going to continue to expand and form new partnerships. This is critical, especially in tough times, to get projects completed. We're also going to continue to identify alternate funding sources. This is something that is also important for us to get projects done. Something that we're going to hit hard now, like I mentioned earlier, is estate planning when people are preparing their final wishes. And also, we're going to have a number of capital campaigns. An example of a project is we know that we're in need of a clubhouse at actually, frankly, both of our golf facilities, but we're going to identify Highland Springs as the first target, and we have partners in line for that. So we'll have more information coming on that soon. And then we want to continue to work with the Rock Island Park Foundation, our nonprofit foundation, to continue to build the Youth Scholarship Fund. This is important all the time, but it's especially important now with COVID. We have families that cannot afford to put their kids through our programs and services. And while we have to charge so we stay sustainable in these programs, it's still important during all times that we have scholarship money available for those that can't pay a fee or a full fee in place. And that's something that we're committed to. And we have a $20,000 goal for 2021, and we're already $15,000 along the way on that. And I think we're going to surpass that goal. And that puts over 300 to 400 kids through our programs. It puts a big dent in our population that needs our assistance. So with that, I appreciate the time, and we're available for any questions you may have.
Any council? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is Alderman Sforgettis. That was an excellent report, John and Todd. And I want you to know that the parks in Rock Island have been a wonderful place to go, especially during this difficult time of the COVID virus, when you can walk through the parks, enjoy the outdoors, breathe some fresh air, and have lots of space, distance between people. It's been a wonderful escape especially for the people who don't have large yards or places where they can walk. And I've really appreciated the parks this season. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd want to include Public Works in that as well. They've been a great partner in helping us do that.
John, this is Dylan Parker. Can you hear me?
I can.
I'll echo what Spaghettis just said. You've always done a great job leading this department, and your staff and everything you do is always a breath of fresh air and fresh thinking. Two questions. One, you were talking about going after more grants. Is the Bi-State Regional Commission able to assist with grant applications? I know they might more typically pursue like public works engineering grants, but is that an opportunity to use them versus our own internal staff?
Yes, and we have utilized them in the past. The more rec or event-specific grants we tend to do in-house, but the larger capital campaign efforts, we will be reaching out to Bi-State.
Sounds good to me. Second thing, I remember a year ago, 2 years ago, the last time you were here for a study session, you had mentioned that it was the park department's plan to come up with a strategic plan by park. So Lincoln Park, Longview Park, et cetera, would all have kind of their own individual strategic plans to go about addressing the needs in each park. Has that happened? There was, I guess I was a little confused. There was mentions of several different planning processes during your presentation. Do you have specific strategic plans by park at this time?
Yes, we do. And Todd and I'll provide all of the council a copy of that binder, and it shows not only the parks, but all of our facilities as well.
That sounds good. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Any other comments or questions? Once again, I got to echo the same thing. Job well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep, I'm lucky I've got a great staff and
Yes.
partners, so it's working out well. Thanks.
All right. Stephanie, I assume you're up next, Finance Department. Last time? No, no. Nope.
So, good evening. Tonight, we're taking our first thorough look at the CIP budget in its draft form. So, we'll be going over the different components of it. This is basically a list at this point in time. And then once we finalize it, staff will make sure that all of these projects are contained within the 2021 budget and within the ordinance when it is approved by council. So with that, the 5-year prioritized listing of major public improvement projects that's contained within this agenda item shows what was approved last year by City Council. And of course, it does display a list of projects requested and recommended for this year and then 4 additional years, so 5 years. But do keep in mind as we're moving forward that council is only approving the 2021 CIP list. So we do always include those future years. It is good for planning purposes and allows us to take advantage of grant opportunities as well. Our CIP is supported through multiple funding sources, and when we are setting this up, when departments are providing their list, they do look at what council goals are and keep that in mind. As we go through the presentation tonight, we welcome comments and suggestions, and we'll make adjustments to the plan for approval at a later council meeting. So what does the 2021 CIP budget include? First of all, it's $12.5 million in total projects, with 39% of it allocated towards miscellaneous. Hate the word miscellaneous, and that's a big number to be miscellaneous, but miscellaneous expenses are in most part TIF related. And so when we say TIF, we're talking about redevelopment agreements, so kind of funding past projects and new projects, upcoming demolitions that might be planned, facade improvements. And the largest item in there this year is $1 million earmarked or allocated towards a parking garage improvements, maintenance, that kind of thing. And for right now, that's just a placeholder. 9% is utility funds, so when we say utilities, we're talking water, wastewater, and storm. And then 14% streets, so this is a bigger percentage than we've had in the past. And the largest of the projects that you'll see is related to Black Hawk Hills and the River Heights Road reconstruction. That's west of 30th, and that's $1 million. And we started that project and engineering work in the current year. The second largest streets project is actually the 40th Avenue Court Bridge repair, which is $225,000. So contained in total in the 5 years of the CIP agenda item that's before you is $87.1 million over a 5-year period. So I mentioned there's different funding sources. The largest is 36.2%, and that's TIF, and we talked about that a little bit. And the second largest is gaming at 29.6%. And so much of our CIP list is covered by gaming funds. And then the third largest is grants. That's that blue pie right about 10 o'clock and 11.6%. And we're seeing that number increase over time, which is a good trend. So our focus areas, the largest, biggest piece of that pie, 43.1%, that lovely miscellaneous section, and we discussed that a little bit. And the second biggest piece is debt service. So 29.3% of the list before you is related to debt service. So a total of $3.6 million in principal and interest payments expected to be paid next year. Note that for the first time, $75,000 of that will be paid out of the Watchtower TIF. So we will use some of that fund balance to pay next year's debt service. The third largest piece is our streets. Utilities. So we didn't talk about which percentage of those pies on that prior list was utilities, but it was 8.8%. And these are the three areas we typically look at. And for the first time in a long time, we are not planning on spending anything on capital projects in wastewater. So that's why you see a 0 there. But we do have some funds planned in water and stormwater. Both of them will share a cost of the 24th Street water tower storm drain, which is a total of $950,000 between those two funds. And then we will conduct some engineering and water main replacement. 2 areas are noted. You'll see 11th Street between 25th and 42nd Avenue, and then also 35th Street near Augustana. So there is a joint project on the street side where there is a intersection and block near Augustana, which Augustana is sharing in that, which is nice to see. And you'll often see projects in water and wastewater that align with street projects. So when we're doing a major street, you'll see the opportunity to take advantage of improving the infrastructure under those streets. So last meeting, we had a great study session with Public Works when they shared their work plan. They provided a lot of detail regarding streets and maintenance work that they have planned for next year and the years to come. That plan is incorporated within the CIP, and the first area is streets, and I mentioned that already, the 40th Avenue Court Bridge repair and Black Hawk Hills project. And that area that we'll be sharing with Augustana is 35th Street at 6th and 7th Avenues. We also do have some street maintenance work planned, and this is utilizing our local gas tax that starting in CY 2020, the year we're in now, the local gas tax is allocated towards a separate fund that is used for street maintenance and street work. So So contributions, account for about 4% of our CIP next year, a little less than in the past. See some logos up here and just wanted to point out a couple of them. You know, one top right, something we didn't get to see this year, and that's the fireworks for Red, White, and Boom. And bottom right, the Labor Day Parade. So those funds that we budgeted this year will be allocated towards next year's events. And so that helped give us a little gaming room as we were, gaming funds room as we were working on balancing the CIP budget. But the Quad City Botanical Centers is front and center, and just a reminder, several years ago, we did commit $150,000 to support infrastructure work at the facility there. And later on tonight in the council meeting, you see a budget adjustment bringing forward the planned funds from 2019. They didn't quite finish their project that they had planned for that, and so that project did finish up in recent weeks, and so you'll see that. But, so what you do see in next year's is the final piece of that $150,000, so $30,000, and that'll complete the city's promise to the Botanical Center. Other CIP projects, so body-worn cameras. I think it was my first budget year here in 2017 was the implementation of body cameras for our sworn police officers. And so each year the cost has been about $96,000, and we have paid for that through gaming funds in the past, and that is now contained within the general fund budget. So we do keep that on the list, and that contract is up for negotiation, I believe, in this near term in the next year. You also see on this plan is cameras and laptops for the squads. So we are proceeding forth and replacing the police fleet with lease vehicles, and with that, the police department has requested that their cameras within the squads be upgraded to basically the same brand and as their body cameras, so they'll work seamlessly together. But also with that change, new laptops will be needed, and so that is also within the budget. And the funding source is a little bit of fleet and some of the police department funds. Economic development is always an important piece of our plan, and we do see some facade improvement and demolition and rebates. And when we say rebates, we are talking about the new residential property tax rebates. So as CED does administer that program, and as new construction is completed, residents can enjoy the opportunity to receive a rebate for a certain amount of dollars over a certain amount of time. And we do have that noted within the CIP plan. And then program support, and some are contracts and others are contributions, and so you'll see what was requested and what is recommended based on funding sources. So this is a year where there is some impact on available funding for next year, and so that's just something that you do have to keep in mind, where there have been requests that in the past we have funded, and this next year, you know, we might not be funding it or might be reducing the funding just a little bit. So with that is tiny little numbers that I can't actually read, so hopefully everybody at home and at their computers and such can zoom in. But I did just want to take a moment and explain these 6 pages, I believe it is, of the capital improvement plan. It is organized for the most part by department, and so the second column has the department. So you'll see all of the CED related items together, all of the public works related items together. You see the categories and funding sources in the next 2 columns that we've talked about. And then you see the recommended CY20 column, and so hopefully I didn't mess this up. And it does foot to 13.5 million. So last year, the final approved CIP was 13.5 million. And so we keep those on there, and then we have requested and recommended. And so the requested column is always more than what we can recommend. And so this year, the requested column was totaled to 18.1 million. And again, we have 12.5 million. And then we have the subsequent years There's one other piece that I wanted just to point out to you about this schedule, because it is really useful, and I look at it all the time. And then we'll take some questions or comments. And the piece I wanted to point out to you is just at the last page, page 15 of the agenda item. And this is also just something I continue to check to make sure that I haven't goofed something up in this schedule, because there's a lot of nice formulas and things in there. But it's basically three groupings. So you see a funding, so you see that 12.5 million, broken into funding sources. Then you also see it by department. And so you can see that for next year, the department with the most projects or items to administer, a lot of that being redevelopment agreements, is CED at 5 million, and then the category, which we referred to. So with that, I'll take a breath and stop talking, and then any questions, comments, concerns?
Stephanie, this is Alderman Sforgettis. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
I had to take a break from reading this spreadsheet because of the fine print. My eyes were getting blurry. But aside from that, there's some just a few questions on page 10 of 15, which is the first page of the spreadsheet. About 3/4 of the way down, substandard structure demolition fund 207. Are you tracking me?
Yes.
Okay, so for calendar year 2020, the recommended amount was 50,000, and for 2021, the requested amount is 100,000, and recommended for 2021, I don't see anything there, so I'm assuming that's zero.
So yes, this is a typical line that's been in our CIP. If you were to look at last year's, they also requested $100,000, and we have typically funded this at the 50,000 level out of gaming funds. So gaming funds are a bit constricted, and we did not have enough funds to allocate from this source. Do keep in mind that we do have demolition funds budgeted in other areas of the city, and one of them being CDBG funds, our Fund 242, and we do have the opportunity to utilize it in our TIF districts as well.
Well, that's good to know. I had the experience this year of finally getting a burned out house in the 3rd Ward demolished, which I've been working on for 3.5 years. And I was just concerned that we have some funding for demolition. I have one more quick question, if I might.
Sure.
The very next page, page 11 of 15, under parking ramp renovations, downtown TIF. It's about 1/4 of the way down the page. Are you finding that?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
All right. So basically, requested amount was 700,000. Recommended amount for 2021 is 1 million. And I don't recall the discussion around that, other than the fact that there were some options we were considering. So my question is, why is the recommended amount 1 million instead of the requested amount of 700,000?
I would say some of that is timing, and so at the time that the department submit these is late spring, early summer, and the $700,000 was carried forward from last year. So in the 2020 budget, there was $700,000 planned for in the downtown TIF, and so they brought that forward. Keep in mind that the parking study that was done a couple of years ago revealed more than $4 million in expenditures recommended to invest in that facility. And so the use of the downtown TIF is still in play as we have steps that we need to take for that TIF and obligating the funds. This $1 million is not set in stone, but is a good amount to use towards maintenance for that facility and utilizing TIF funds. I know Randy and the CED department are working on that final list. So as that final list is set, these numbers might change.
Okay, one quick follow-up question. If one of the options was to demolish the parking ramp rather than to repair it or replace it, would that money come from this? If we chose to demolish it, would that come from this same fund, or would that come from another fund?
That would come from the same funding source that you see in the row that you pointed out.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
One question.
Sure, go ahead.
On that same page, we're looking at the network camera systems for the police department, and there's $100,000 recommended or requested, but nothing was recommended. Is that what you were discussing earlier, that we're not sure where that's going to come from, or it's to be determined?
So you're on the same page, or are we one down here?
13 of 15. About the third line down.
Okay, so the network camera system is another item unrelated to the squads. And so this has more to do with the community cameras throughout the city. We've been utilizing some other funding sources for cameras at intersections,
Okay.
the bridge, and that kind of thing. They did request another $100,000 for next year. And we put the funding source TBD, to be determined, but at this point, no funding source has been identified to expand that program, at least for next year.
That's one of those we would like to have, but may have to do
And
without.
that's where the CIP plan is good. It's one of the things we start with when we're working on next year's CIP is what did we request? It's good to keep those things in mind. We could easily just delete that row, but we really shouldn't because it is a need.
And then I see that a few lines down there, the water main replacement, is that project just been completed or abandoned, or?
So what's the amount and what's the description?
Well, there's nothing there. I mean, it was recommended 300,000 in calendar year 20, but and at 21 going forward, I assume that then, has that been completed, or?
I would think that was completed. It was in the 2020 budget, and if it's not been completed, perhaps it will be yet. Sometimes, and especially this year in 2020 with COVID, some projects were delayed.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, this might be a project, if it wasn't done, that might be pushed out further, waiting for available funding.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions up to this point?
Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. It's a difficult job. All right. Well, I believe that's all we have for study session. So we will leave this, and I hate to see, we don't officially adjourn this, so we just leave this, right? And we will, what's that? Do we need a roll call to adjourn? For the next meeting? Yeah. So we will just adjourn this, and we'll be starting this back up at 6:45.